Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Paper Tiger. If you're new here, my name is Steven, and this is my 1996 Ford Mustang GT. And last September, I bought this car, which means that I've officially owned it for over a year now. But now the question becomes, was it a good purchase? I think that the answer is yes, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to go over everything that this car excels at, where it falls short, and why at the end of the day, this weird and wonderful car is still worth it in 2024. Let's get into it.
You know, I know you're not so innocent. Girl, your touch, your love is just so venomous. These heights, I'm high off adrenaline. Two more shots of feeling dead. Dozing off of this medicine. I heard enough, don't let the devil in.
Okay, first thing I want you guys to keep in mind while you're watching this. This car is 28 years old, and this is one of the rougher examples. Since this is a used car, you'll have some that are in nicer shape and some that are in worse shape. So I'm going to try and keep this review as universal as possible, while also mentioning a few things that I've learned over the past year that I think will help you guys out if you're looking at picking up a car like this. And to start off, I want to talk about the heart of this thing, the motor. Yep. We're starting under the hood. As per normal of the 96 GT, this car is powered by a 4.6 liter V8. This is one of the 3 engine options that were offered in this generation Mustang. You had the 3.8 liter V6, the 4.6 liter V8, and the 5 liter 302. This engine measures in at 281 cubic inches, which you fellow Mustang nerds will probably recognize as being slightly smaller than the original V8 that was offered in the 1964.5 Mustang, which was 289 cubic inches. But this is not that engine, not even a little bit. This is a modular V8, which graced all of the variants of Mustangs of this era, even up until the New Edge redesign, which I'll touch on later. But it's important to note that of the modular V8s that were used in these Mustangs, this one is the bottom of the barrel. This motor is run from a single overhead cam, while later variants of the engine were run from dual overhead cams, which means that this engine runs only on 2 valves per cylinder, while later variants were able to run on 3 or 4 valves per cylinder, giving them much more power and torque, not to mention a different sound. Now, that's not to say that this engine is incapable of making power, as I plan to do sometime in the future. But by modern standards, this is no powerhouse, and you're not going to win any drag races on a stock setup. So from the factory, this car isn't exactly going to rip your face off, but it's not exactly a slouch, and it's definitely enough to make you smile, which for me is the most important part of the car. It's also enough to break the tires loose, have some good old-fashioned muscle car fun times, which my parents would definitely not approve of. But hey, Mustangs weren't meant to make your parents happy. They were meant to be freaking awesome. And besides making a decent amount of power, you know what else is awesome? The reliability of this engine. Because in this first year of ownership, this thing has been freaking bulletproof. I mean, yeah, it's old, and I've had to do some things. Like, I had to clean the idle air control valve, and like, the coolant system and the brake systems, they need looked over. But hey, the engine itself, it's doggone good, all right? Besides, those things aren't actually important, right? Even when I've run this engine hard, it is always done exceedingly well. Just keep an eye on your maintenance schedule, and this bad boy will treat you right. The only thing I feel like I should mention is that my particular engine does like to drink just a little bit of oil, and this is a known problem for these engines, that around 120,000 miles, the valve stem seals start to go bad, so that's what I'm guessing is the culprit. But for the most part, I am extremely happy with this engine, especially since this car is my daily driver for the most part. Going forward in the future, I do hope to pull the engine out, do all the seals, do all the maintenance, and then slap some more power mods on it so I can make it a little bit faster and more reliable and hopefully awesome. But you know what's not awesome? The interior of this car. Let me explain. Again, keep in mind that this car is going to be 30 years old soon, and living with this car day to day, I have definitely found some pluses and minuses to this interior. First of those being, everything is made from plastic. This was the 90s, so you just kind of got to accept that. From a user standpoint, everything is actually pretty easily reachable, but this car does suffer from the fact that it's a sports car. The glove box and the center console are tiny. One thing that I think is really cool is that this little cup holder folds out of the center console so you can put your drinks in it. However, it kind of interferes with the e-brake and the shifter if you have it out, especially if there's a drink in it. It can be kind of hard to like finagle your arm around your drink to shift gears. It's also too small to hold a lot of the drinks that are for sale today. While a can like this would fit in there fine, something like a Big Gulp, it's not gonna fit in there. Trust me, I've tried. But hey, let's try and think positive. I'm just glad that this car has a cup holder. Other things that I like about this car, the gauge cluster, it looks really good. It's just straight 90s cool, you know? In fact, the whole way that this interior is styled is pretty cool. This is called the dual cockpit design, and I like it. Every car has like this hump here for the gauge cluster, but you have one on this side too, and I don't know, it's so unique to this generation Mustang. It's a very 90s interior, if you know what I mean. Real quick, let's talk about another big part of this interior. This little jiggle stick. Yep. This car is a 5-speed manual and I'm proud of it. This is the T45, which was introduced for this generation Mustang specifically to work with the overhead cam style engines. It was originally manufactured by BorgWarner, then Tremec took over production midway through, which, well, that went about as good as you'd expect. You had parts being built by both companies at the same time and then being put together, so yeah, the T45 had some serious growing pains, and it was really only widely used in this generation Mustang. If you're wondering what it's like to drive, let me try and explain it to you. The throws on the shifter are kind of long, but if you're worried about it, it's nothing that a good short throw shifter can't fix, and there's a lot of good ones out there. As for the clutch, it's not hydraulic, it's manual. So it's a little bit heavy and it takes some getting used to. I daily drive this thing and I don't always get good shifts. And yeah, daily driving this car can get a little bit tiring sometimes. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it to you, but hey, it's possible because I did it. Taking this thing on a drive anywhere is a great time. It has so much personality, so much presence, just so much awesome. And a large part of that has to do with how it looks and sounds. So, let's talk about it. Boy, we have entered subjective territory now. Styling is always subjective, and for Mustang fans, this one in particular is a love it or hate it kind of situation. For the 3 people in the back row who didn't know, this generation Mustang is divided into 3 main variants. First, you have the 94 to 95 cars, which had this body style, but with vertical taillights in the back. And Ford got a lot of flack for doing that. So starting in 96, they gave us back the vertical taillights and they kept this body style until 1999, when they updated the car's styling for the 21st century with the new Edge, which is still the same car, but with a very, very different style and, dare I say, vibe. The lines everywhere are just much sharper and more aggressive and streaked and streamlined, and to be honest, I actually really like it. But before I get ahead of myself, whether you prefer the old style or the new Edge redesign is of course your preference, but for this particular car, we're looking at a 1996. Like I said, this definitely fits the time period, but I still think it looks alright today. That classic pony car look is still there, and while yes, this is a radical departure from the Fox body, I like the sleeker lines of the SN-95. It looks cleaner, not to mention a little bit longer and more refined than the Fox. Even though they still ride on the same platform, these are very different looking cars. I'm not going to say that it's automotive perfection, but I do like the lines that they went for. It's not too outlandish, but it's by no means boring. What I don't like about the exterior of this car are the wheels. These are the stock pony style wheels, and I actually think that they look pretty good. They're not terrible, very 90s, but what I don't like is the fitment. It is not mint. They are super tucked back into these wheel arches, and especially coming around the side of the car, you can really see it. If you want to get these cars to look better, either get a staggered setup or prepare to run some wheel spacers, because this is something that you got to be aware of if you want these cars to look good. Speaking of upgrades, let's take another listen to this thing. As we already discussed, this is not an old school carbureted V8. No, this is 1996 and the times are changing. Get with the program. And as such, this car sounds a lot different than the 302, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I do love this exhaust note. It's more refined than the traditional American grunt, but it definitely still sounds like a Mustang. Not quite the same as the 302, I'll agree to that, but it's there and it's proud. However, regarding the exhaust, I do have a cautionary tale to those of you who are looking to modify your stock exhaust. I got a generic X-pipe off of Facebook Marketplace for dirt cheap that fit a 2002 Mustang. It did not fit this car very well, and it leaked really badly. How very surprising. So I took the car to an exhaust shop, I got it all rewelded, and that fixed the exhaust leaks, and it sounded way better.
We just got some exhaust work done to this thing. Let's see if it sounds any different.
Oh, that's so much better. Bolted to the X-Pipe, I have a Flowmaster American Thunder catback exhaust system, which is one of the first things that I put on the car when I got it. And I highly recommend the American Thunder system. I think it's a great value, especially if you want to get a bit more noisy without becoming obnoxious. But I do not recommend getting the generic X-Pipe. I recommend getting the BBK X-Pipe, especially since I end up paying almost as much for the generic X-Pipe as I would have on a brand new BBK. So, sorry Donut Media, but I think that this time, more money would have meant more better.
This is a 6th generation Ford Mustang GT.
All right, let's keep this train a-rolling. So what else do you need to know about this machine? Well, to understand, let's try and look at the vision that this car was trying to fit. The Mustang basically created its own segment whenever it first dropped in 1964 and a half. And the formula hasn't changed much since then. It's one half sports car, one half muscle car, and personally, I think that this car rides the line perfectly. It's sporty and fun to drive, and it's fast in a straight line. The manual gives it a whole new aspect of challenge and fun. And the roar of the exhaust just makes this thing feel like it has a voice and a soul. Now the 5-speed isn't perfect, and the interiors are only gonna get rougher from here. But when you drive this car, you're smiling. So we finally reached the question that I began with. Should one of you watching this buy one of these cars? I think so. They're good cars, and there's a dedicated community behind these cars that will help you. Yes, you could go with a more modern Mustang, and it'll have more amenities, and it'll be easier to drive. And heck, it'll probably be a lot faster. But what you gain in ease, you lose in soul. This car is worth it to me simply because of the raw feels that you get from driving it and the personality that this car has. If I have convinced you, I do feel I need to warn you. It's gonna be a labor of love sometimes. A car this old, it's definitely gonna have stuff go wrong with it. But on the other side, hard work pays off. I mean, look at just how far this car has come in 1 year. And in doing so, you're gonna be helping to preserve one of the funkiest pieces of Mustang history. There's a reason that the SN-95 isn't always revered within Mustang circles. This thing's weird. Compared to almost any other Mustang on the road, the looks are strange. It's not the fastest Mustang, and it sounds different. But at the same time, every time I take this car out to an event, somebody comes up to me and tells me that they like the car, or that they used to have one, or they knew someone who had one. And usually they always have a story that goes with it. And I feel like that should say something. These cars have touched a lot of people's lives. So in conclusion, yes, there are better cars out there, but the SN-95 Mustang is always going to be a very special piece of Mustang history. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. You know, if I could go back in time and tell my 16-year-old self that in just a couple years I'd be rolling around in a 90s Mustang, I probably would have lost my freaking mind. I've been dreaming of getting my own project car for years upon years, so finally being able to stand here with my own car, it's amazing. And this car has come so far in just the first year of me owning it. This thing went from a loud, barely drivable death trap to a genuinely great daily driver that I love driving every single time I get into it. And I couldn't have gotten here alone. So to everybody who has helped me get this car to the point that it's at right now, thank you all so much. Y'all know who you are. Thank you guys so much. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe if you want. I don't care, I won't get offended. Thank you all so much for watching. Go out there, build some cool stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and bye-bye.